Hello, everybody.
Hey there.
Welcome back, Infinite Beings. It's great to have you here with us on the Infinite Me, where every day we're reminding you that you're already infinite. You've already got your powers. You don't have to ascend to them. Maybe you've just forgotten about them. But we're here to remind you how to use them and how to play with them all.
Yep.
So that you can have a direct experience of your infinite self every single day. And so I'm Mandy, and I'm not sure which way I'm going to go. That way?
That way.
No. So we're your infinite wingmate, supporting you to play in the infinite zone. So no matter what reality is presenting to you. If you're watching the replay from yesterday, let us know in the comments. Yesterday we talked about this idea of giving ourselves permission. So where we feel like we have to, it feels like somehow there needs to be some kind of permissions. The word that's coming to me is just about that for you to actually be yourself, to show up as yourself, as if somehow there's some little lever that you've got to switch on that says it's okay to do that or something, and somehow you feel like it's free suddenly to do that. And sometimes that comes from an outside person reflecting that back, that they look really free and authentic, and so you think, oh wow, I can do that too, and it gives you courage to do it. So we talked all about that and how that's really still a function of the ego, even giving yourself permission, because if you're infinite, then you don't need permission to be there too. So check that one out. And today we thought we're going to jump into a topic which is probably very prevalent on the consciousness journey, is when you're starting to know yourself more as this infinite space, and you are met with a lot of opposition sometimes from the outside world. So a lot of opinions on what you should do, what you shouldn't be doing, and how do you stay true to yourself in those moments when you are getting people kind of giving you directions on what they think is the best thing for you to do with your life, or your ideas, or just they don't like what you're doing. You show up differently, you start to act differently and come from a different space, and they don't quite like that because you're not the old you anymore, and they maybe can't get the same outcomes that they used to get from you or manipulate you anymore like they used to. So how do you deal with that? Like, how do you stay in your own lane and not sort of looking outside of you all the time and being swayed or pulled into somebody else's world and stories? So
I think the starting point is to all agree that everybody has an opinion about something.
Yes.
So
we don't all have to agree.
We don't all have to agree, but everyone will have an opinion about that. So,
yes.
Welcome to being human.
Yeah. I think it is just interesting, but that how the because you could apply this to any scenario. Like, it doesn't even have to be on this consciousness journey, but you do start to notice it a lot more, I think, because you start to become a lot more aware of your own thoughts and stories that you tell yourself, and your habits that you might start to shift because you realize they're not really serving you anymore. You can see where you're getting in your own way, so you start to shift some things internally within yourself, and therefore you show up differently, and you do start to be more of yourself. Like you that whole giving yourself permission that we talked about yesterday, you do start to do that more and show up. And sometimes people around you don't quite like that, and it's not a conscious thing. They're probably not even aware that you're showing up differently. They just energetically, you're not doing the same things perhaps, or you're not having the same type of conversations, or you can't as easily be swayed into doing what they would like to do, which maybe used to happen all the time. And so they get a little bit frustrated, like their ego starts to get very annoyed by that. And so that can look like someone telling you how you should be doing your life, or not agreeing with a decision that you're making. And then it can be hard sometimes to stay, because there is still part of us that doesn't want to let people down. We don't want to have conflict around us. We don't want to feel that tension. But there does seem to be a bit of a time that you go through, that I've found anyway, that you do have to have some of these sort of conversations with people. Like, it's sort of like a bridging conversation, I guess, to kind of go, well, that's how I used to be, and I'm not that way anymore, to kind of catch people up to where you're going, I think, sometimes too. So there is that tension. There is like a bit of tension sometimes, on this journey, going into these type of spaces, to have those, you get into those situations with people, and it does feel a bit uncomfortable at times, because it's kind of testing you to stay, what do you know is the absolute truth, versus getting dragged into that ego story again. How do you deal with that?
And when you first start, it might seem like everybody's got an opinion all of a sudden, and it's sort of like, oh, why is that? But
Yes.
maybe, like, just from what you're saying now, maybe it's because you've become more aware of everything.
I think
Before
so,
you're
yeah.
just in the story and you're in your life and all that sort of stuff, and you're not aware consciously of what's going on, like that there is a space outside of the story as well.
Yes.
So as you wake up to the space outside of the story and not being in the story so much, then you're becoming more aware in general. So then it probably seems like there's a lot more opinions going on from people, but they've probably always been there. You just didn't actually realize that because you're being run by everybody's opinions, and my mum wants me to do this and my dad says that, and then my boss says something else, and my friends say I should do this, social media says I should do something else, and you're just functioning,
kind of
doing all of that.
Yeah, we're in that
question.
reactive mode. Like we're in reactive mode, reacting to what's going on around us without being aware probably what's happening.
You're not questioning it, you're just appeasing everybody, generally. And then you start to go, hang on a moment, like, I'm not doing this anymore, like something's not right with this. So you do start to step outside of that, and then you start to see everybody's opinions and go, oh my God, everyone's got an opinion all of a sudden. I was like, no, everyone had an opinion and you just didn't see it before. So maybe that's the starting point, is to say, okay, it's going to seem like there's lots more opinions all of a sudden. And then as you're shifting and changing, definitely their ego is going to get a little bit worried about that, because you're not the same old you anymore, and you can't get pushed around so much. You have different opinions on things yourself now. You're not speaking the same language. Generally, your language changes as you become more conscious. You're using you use certain words, but not other words anymore. And I've noticed too that when somebody's on a roll and they're telling you a story type thing, like they want you to buy into that story as well. And then if you're really honest with yourself, you go, not really buying that story, sort of thing. And then all of a sudden it's like, bang, that story stops dead, sort of thing. Like the energy that they had in that story stops dead. And it's sort of like, oh, so all the fun's gone out of it now. Like, because you've shut that down because you've just brought the truth in, sort of thing. Like, and so people get angry and frustrated at that sort of thing because you're not buying into their story anymore. Like they're bullshit. So it's sort of like
calling them on it, aren't you?
You sort of are tending to call people on stuff, and it's like that can really cause some angst for people, because it's like, oh, you used to like go along with my story, buy into it, and we had conversations for hours about those people, and or that movement sort of thing that I don't agree with, and or what's happening at work and all that sort of stuff. Now you're not doing that. It's like, oh, like, okay, well, now we're not having any fun anymore.
We've probably all had experiences of like a friend, that we probably all have one of these friends where they would like to tell you all the things that are going wrong all the time, or the stories that are happening and how this is happening to them, and this person's doing this, and they don't like the job and this and that. But then, and so you might offer some kind of solution or a suggestion or something, but they're clearly not interested in in fixing their supposed problem that they have. They just want to talk about it. So it usually gets quite obvious after you've offered. They may ask you for advice too. Sometimes they don't, and sometimes you don't waste your energy offering advice if it's not asked for. I mean, I've definitely have done that too, and you sort of think, well, they're not really asking, they're not interested. But sometimes you do actually get asked, and then they're not interested but in taking anyone's advice around them, or using someone else's experience on an issue. They just want to keep talking about that story and running that story too. So there is that thing at some point you just kind of got to go, why am I investing my energy in this? Like, it's because it is a choice to invest your energy in those conversations. And I've definitely get drawn into those conversations at times with people, and then there comes a point where you're just like, no, enough. I'm not having this conversation anymore. And so you either might end the conversation or just say something that kind of disrupts the pattern, like the thought pattern that's going on for them. And so that can sometimes cause people don't, as I said, it's not a conscious thing a lot of the time. They're not aware that these are patterns perhaps that they run, but by interrupting them, sometimes it's kind of like, no, well, that's, they don't like that kind of thing. Like it's kind of, you are being
the illusion all of a sudden.
They can, like the power's going out of it, sort of thing. Like they don't have that same power anymore. They can't pull you into their story anymore. You don't get drawn into it. So it can be a little bit difficult at times, but
I think it can be a bit of a sad journey and seem a bit
Mm.
lonely at times as well, like because you are
Yeah,
shifting
true.
and changing so quickly that you're leaving people behind almost. And it's people, you've probably been friends with for a long time, or your family or something, and it's suddenly you're not relating to them as much as what you
Mm.
used to. And it's like, it's really hard, like to suddenly go, you know what, I'm not actually gelling with that person anymore. Like I need to let that go, whether you do that consciously or it just falls away anyway, and then you reflect on it down the
Yes.
track and go, oh, I used to always talk to that person, I don't ever
Mm.
speak to them anymore, sort of thing. Like, it's a bit sad. So it can seem a bit lonely at times, where you sort of feel like you're the only one that's actually feeling like you are these days.
Yes.
Type of thing. And I guess that's why people gravitate towards community and
Yes.
different courses and things like that, where you can get around people that are like-minded and talk. And I remember when we first started John Demartini's work, like I think over the
Mm.
years, subconsciously, or probably ever since I was a kid, really, I always felt like things were different. Like I didn't really feel like I'd go to work and do the 40 hours every week and all that sort of stuff. Like that I just never got that. Like ever since I was really little. And it wasn't until we did John Demartini's work that time, sitting in the breakthrough experience that weekend, that he spoke that sort of language, not directly about that language, but suddenly I was like, oh my God, I'm home. Like I've actually found my people. Like there are other people like this.
That ask
I
the
guess
same questions. And
that was the start of the journey of like, there is more to this story. Like the thing you've been feeling is actually true.
Mm.
And it's like, oh my God, there's this feeling of coming home. So I guess it is about accepting that things shift and change all the time.
Yes.
On this journey, and people will come and go from your life constantly, sort of thing, and even partners and stuff that you thought that would be there forever sometimes break up, but then sometimes they have a shake up as well, like Jodie and I had recently, sort of thing. We were coasting along and it was like something's not gelling right, like thinking we were going to break up, and then the shake up was enough to wake us both up and we readjusted our whole relationship and business. Everything changed, and I guess we woke up, both of us, and moved to that next level. And it's sort of like, okay, we can stay together because we are now speaking that same language again. So I think it's difficult, definitely, when people have opinions, but I think a lot of it is driven by their ego and their fear.
Fear, definitely.
They feel like they can feel that process going on of losing you because you're not talking the same language as them anymore, and they're hanging on to that. So they'll do anything they can to hang on to that, and they'll say different things to try and I was going to say demeanor. That's not that word. Demure. No idea what that word is. Downplay. Downplay what your new focus.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
What is the word?
I know what you mean. Yeah, I know the word you mean, but I can't think of it either.
I don't know. So, they might actually really ridicule what you're doing and try and break that down a little bit, not because they don't agree with it. Like if you're talking truth and consciousness, then of course they're going to job with that. Everybody jobs with that. But they've got this overlay of story and this fear of loss, I guess, of losing you and what has been. That's comfortable, and then suddenly that's disappearing, and that's it's a hard thing for the ego, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
So I don't think people mean to give their opinions negatively towards what you're doing. I think it really is just that fear. So if you can sort of step back and go, that's where it's coming from, I totally understand now. Like, I think that point of empathy, I guess, understanding their story and where it's coming from, even if they don't get it themselves and they're not consciously aware of it. As a conscious being, you can definitely come from that space and go, okay, I get what's going on in this situation right now. I can see the process at play here. That's cool. And then operate from that space of empathy.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's true what you're saying. It's definitely not always coming from that they don't think that what you're doing is a good idea. It is just that pure ego reaction that's going to lash out when it's not getting its needs met, the way that it's used to getting its needs met as well. So sometimes you taking a step in the direction of your truth actually changes a whole relationship around for the better sometimes. Like, it gives it more freedom and things like that. But in the beginning, it can look or feel a little bit like you're walking on eggshells a little bit, like, that you can't say what it's going to, like, tip that person over the edge. And so sometimes it is better just to hold things into yourself sometimes as well, and not share everything. You can, if you want to, that at the end of the day, if we are infinite beings and we're here just to express what's moving through us, then we are free to express whatever we want to express. But sometimes it is just as helpful to not share everything with everybody around you that doesn't quite get where you're at as well, just so that you don't have those moments of feeling like you're pulled off course, especially if it's a particularly strong personality in your life too, that somebody that you have, sometimes like a parent, definitely, or maybe a very close brother or sister or something, or someone that you just really rely on, you're very close with. You do sort of value their opinion, and I guess at the end of the day, you're looking for that the whole approval thing on some level. I guess sometimes it's probably someone that you're used to getting that approval from, say. So then when you start to challenge that and you start to feel that almost getting taken away, that can be quite a challenging moment. It's not the truth, obviously, it's all ego stuff, but it still feels, we still have that ego part of us running, so it does feel like we're pulling away. And a bit like what you said, it can feel a bit lonely at times on the journey, until you kind of find some people around you that reflect back to you like the same things that you're thinking. And people don't have to agree with your opinions on things either. It's not even about that. It's more just talking the same language, as you said, and people that are standing up for their own truth and their own growth as well. Like, and they're here to kind of help other people. What's that word? Like, kind of that camaraderie, I guess, that you have with people when they do think the same way as you. Like, they're always looking at the potential of things rather than looking at the limited space. So it is a very different conversation that you tend to have with those people, and a different energy. But the other point that was coming up with what you were saying before is that I think that's why it is so important to actually have support on this journey too, the other people around you that talk the same language and get where you're coming from, and understand sometimes how difficult it can be. So whether that support is in the form of a community that you're a part of, or a mentor that you have, or you're part of a coaching program that people are all kind of doing the same, they're all committed to the same journey. It is extremely helpful, like, to be in that space, to know that you're kind of not on your own. And then what's Louise got here, finding your tribe and your peeps. Definitely
Louise, I'm looking for a tribe of people that sit in cocktail glasses. I love that avatar. Sums up Louise just nicely.
But it's definitely true about finding the people that are on the same wavelength as you, if you like, because I'm just thinking from the bigger picture perspective, as the infinite being that all of this is coming from. Like, we're all creating our own realities here in front of us, so we've for some reason have put these things on our path, like to wake up in these ways, and to have these people that supposedly look like they're in opposition to us to I don't know, to me it feels like, well, they're just showing you where you still have your power invested in stories. So when you feel pulled into somebody else's story or their opinion on you, or you're looking for their approval, it just sort of shows you where you still got that power outside of you all the time, that you feel like somebody else can change your story to that degree, or take away something from you, or that you're going to be worse off if they're out of your life. And it's kind of like it is just a story at the end of the day, but we get really drawn into it, and it is an opportunity to take our power back out of that situation, and to see where we still have a lot of limitation going on, and completely change that story around on some levels. Like, I've definitely had some very hard conversations at times with different people, like important people in my life too. And so they're not easy conversations, but the more present, this is the thing I think was coming up when you were talking just before, the more present you can be and know your own truth when you're in those conversations, it's so much easier to have the conversation. It's almost like you're outside of yourself watching yourself have the conversation. It definitely feels like that you're outside of your body, almost like just watching this little human you having the conversation, but the bigger part of you knows that it's just it's just a conversation. It doesn't mean anything at the end of the day. Like it's so you do start to take that power back out of those situations, and you can say what you need to say, and the other person's still going to react however they're going to react, but it doesn't land the same for you, because you do realize that it is just their ego, that it is just fear talking from the other side, and you can sort of hear it more through that lens rather than the little human person that feels like the love's being taken away.
Yeah, and I guess that's it. If the ego is always looking for love and it feels like you're moving on to another space, then their ego definitely is like, oh my God, I'm losing love right now.
Yes.
So it's panicking, and it's doing whatever it can to hang on to that. So yeah, it will fire up, it will get angry, it will get sad. So this whole performance is almost going on in front of you, perhaps. And it's like, wow, it's hard not to get drawn into that and buy into that person's story and their emotion.
Yes.
You know, and that is really difficult if, say, a parent or something, someone that is close to you, or your partner, and they're starting to get really riled up about this, you know, angry or sad or whatever, and really upset. It's like, I've got to let you go on your journey right now. Like, you've got to go through whatever process you're going through right now. If you're really sad and you need to cry for the next hour, then do that. I can't save you from that. It's not about rescuing people. It is about allowing them to go through that process, because that process perhaps is waking them up as well. It's actually them letting go of what was. Like, you might have moved on and been through that process already. You know, you're going through your process slowly, bit by bit. And so you are letting go of people and situations and opinions and thought processes and stuff like that. But if this is a sudden thing for them and you're confronting that with them, they have to go through their process.
Yes.
And it's supporting them in the most loving way to go through that process without rescuing them. And just, you know, I understand what you're going through right now. Like, I understand that it's really upsetting that we're not going to be dealing with each other on the same level that we have been up till now. I get it.
Yes.
And that's, again, that compassion space, I guess, of that's, a conscious being. You have the ability to do that.
Yes.
But yeah, it is. There's something I was going to say. It's gone. It's gone. I don't know. Could be still there.
I was just going to say, in response to what you're just saying there about it, we have to remember that we're not responsible for somebody else's reaction. Like, it's beyond our control what's going to happen outside of us. So we can, like we've spoke about in a couple of videos ago, we were talking about this whole doing what you love and it only being about you. It's not about how it's received on the outside of you. And it's the same thing with this as well. It's like, by you staying in your truth and speaking what's true for you and doing what's true for you in your life, and it is going to be met with opposition at times, that's got nothing to do with you. Like, it's, you've just got to stay within yourself, pulling the power back within yourself all the time and staying true to that. And everything outside of that is just the story. And it's going to happen however it's going to happen. You can't actually control that anyway. And it's not actually any of your business. So it's, you just need to show up as you, say what you need to say, or do the things that you need to do for yourself that feel true. And then it lands how it lands. And you have those conversations when they need to be had, but knowing full well that, you know, you're the infinite being that's creating all this in front of you, and it's an opportunity to take your power back from that and feel free in those situations to have those harder conversations and things that feel really, I know in the past you would have felt very diminished by, or and you can sort of start to step up for yourself a bit more and kind of go, wow, this power that I'd put into this story, like, and I'm walking away from it now, and it can feel very freeing to have very hard conversations at times. Like, it's very bizarre to say that, but sometimes those really hard conversations are the ones that feel the most freeing once you walk away from them. Like, just so much space opens up from them. So it is.
And at the end of the day, like, taking responsibility for an infinite life means also taking responsibility for everything that is playing out in your reality. So that person,
true.
There is no separation to that person that's got that opinion. So it really is about feeling into the truth of that and saying, that's my reflection right now. So why is that showing up? Why did I, as the infinite being, just create that? why is this person saying this to me right now? Seemingly
Yes.
a separate person
Yes.
in the storyline. And it's like, okay, is it purely just to get me to wake up to something? Like, is it to take my power back from this? Because I've always diminished myself compared to that person. I put them on a pedestal, put me down here, and now it's coming back into balance. It's not about you being better than them either. It's about just, being balanced with each other. So both of you are running your own stories and your own lives and stuff. No one's better than the other. So are you taking the power back from that story and from that person that you've actually given your power to over the years, and you're actually becoming more balanced with that person now?
Yes.
So maybe that's the reason why it's showing up. Maybe it's showing up because there is actually some truth in what they're saying to you as well. And occasionally, maybe more than just occasionally, I've dismissed different stuff that Jodie has said to me. But then when I actually sit with it, it's like, no, she's actually tuned in. She's actually telling me something here right now that I need to take note of.
Yes.
So my initial reaction is, oh, blah, 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 and I dismiss it. But then when I do sit with it long enough, it's like, actually, she's right. I'm not stepping up to the plate here. I could be stepping up a lot more, or I'm doing this or I'm doing that. And it's like, she's just brought that to my awareness. So there's definitely those types of opinions as well. It seemed like opinions at the time and you might react to them, but then there's actually some level of truth in it for something to look at and to become aware of. So I guess the blanket thing is, it's always you talking to you. Like, outside people don't exist. But what is it trying to get you to wake up to, sort of thing? Like, what's the purpose of it? Just asking that question until it comes to you and you realize why.
Yeah, why it's there.
Yeah.
And the other thing too, I suppose, is if this is all our own creation, then, as you said, those people are there saying those things to us because we've, in our storyline, have asked for this to happen for whatever reason, to wake us up to something or whatever. But the other thing we do also have to remember is that if we're the one that wrote the script and we've been showing up as ourselves for the last 10, 20, 30 years doing the same thing, and then we suddenly start making some changes and waking up to things, we can't blame the other person for the reactions that they have, because we've essentially trained them to be that way, because we've always shown up the way that we've shown up. We've always responded the way that we have, like that, whether it's we feel like they manipulate us and we give in, or we do the manipulating, like whatever, whichever way it shows up, like we have to remember that we have been showing up like this for a long time. So to expect that other person to suddenly just be okay with you changing in the storyline, sometimes there is that little glitch in time, but sometimes that will last a lifetime too. Some people won't come back from that, and that's okay. We've written that into our story for whatever reason. And but we do have to remember that we're the ones that are changing the storyline. So it's kind of like maybe that character's just going to stay a bit stuck for a little bit, and then they're going to come back online. So
I think it's a good way of looking at it, isn't it? Is like, you've actually rewritten a script. So you've got a brand new show that you've released, or a new episode, new chapter, new season,
series,
new season, and it's different to the old season. That's it. It's no different to any other show where the characters develop. You watch that character arc that happens over seasons of a Netflix show. I can talk about that because I binge watch Netflix all the time. But you actually get to see the character arcs of changing as they develop. And if they didn't do that, then it'd be really boring. So we need people to, get more into the character and get deeper levels of that character and stuff. And that's all that's happening in this as well. We're getting deeper and deeper levels of our own character story. And we're seeing more of that character story because we're becoming more aware of it.
Yeah, true.
And other people as well. We're getting to see other people's characters come out into full bloom. And maybe that character now doesn't suit you.
Yeah.
You see their full bloom character. Like, how many times do you go through the honeymoon phase of a new relationship and go, oh my God, this is all bliss, blah, blah, blah. Then eventually it's like 6 months later, it's like, oh God, I didn't actually see that part of you. Like, that doesn't really gel with me. I don't think we're gelling really well now. So, and it's just like, why is that any different to like watching a show, seeing the characters develop, and some characters work with you and some don't, and some move and shift around and stuff. But it is always you writing that script. So
yes,
you're 100% right in terms of, if you change your character, then the other people have to change as well. If that's still true for them to do that.
Yeah. And maybe they're going to be, written out of the script at that point in time. It's kind of like that's what happens. Is that, I mean, that saying that gets thrown around like, people are in your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime, I think it is. And it's so true when you do look at that, because we've put them in our storyline for some particular reason. So they might just show up for a very momentary conversation with one person, but it's a life transforming, conversation that you have with that person. Or you do have a friend, for 10 years, but then suddenly you just drift apart, or you have a falling out over something, and then you're just not part of their life anymore. And then you do have those other people that are in your life for the whole of your life. They've just been there all the time, and they grow with you. They shift as well. They go through stuff, and then you go through stuff, and but you always just still have that connection, because on some level you're still, on the same page. You're still in the same wavelength, and you can relate to that person. So it is a bit like that. Yeah, they get, as you said, you're writing the script, so it's going to show up how you've essentially put it there. We're just not conscious sometimes of why we've put things in our storyline. But
we're just not aware of why in this moment
why that might have happened.
Why you've done that. But by asking the question, why have I done that, you might get some insights.
Yes.
It's interesting, just when you were saying before about we're training people about what we're
doing. We're training. Yeah.
And it's sort of like the more you step into the infinite space, which is anything and everything, all the different times, it's sort of like you're almost untraining people, or training people to not know what to expect from you. So it's sort of like maybe that's a better space to come from. So when you do pull something out of the bag, it's sort of like the only thing I expected was you to do something crazy. So you did it again.
Yeah. Well, I guess coming from that unknown space, the more we step into that infinite space, then it is going to be changing all the time, because it's pure creativity. And if you're going on the moment of what's moving through you, and you start to access these sort of other levels of potential that you weren't available to you before you stepped into that knowingness of yourself as that infinite feeling and acting on that. So of course you're going to start showing up differently and start doing different things, because you didn't actually have access to those things before. So so it is different.
No, it's true. It was actually
changing.
Similar to a conversation that Jody and I were having last night, and then again this morning, about hanging on to old projects, I guess. Sort of you've created something. Yes. And I guess this does go into the whole outside world and outside opinion, because to the outside world, you look like you're doing 100 different things all at once, and it's always changing, and I never know what you're doing, and I never know what you stand for, and what's your branding again, and what projects do you have. So there was actually a comment that came on. I had posted the video that we did the other day, speaking about different projects and swapping and changing things. I was about doing what you love. And somebody had made a comment about, all these different videos and different projects over the last 6 years type thing. And it was wasn't directly aimed at me, but I think it was. And it was sort of just like this loose comment type thing. And I was like, oh, that's quite funny. So to the outside world, that's what it looks like. You've done shit tons of different things. But it's really funny. And then we've observed, say, Amir Zogi, who's done different things over the years. Gaz Lowe, good friends of ours, both of them in the intuitive space we talk about quite regularly on here. To the outside world, it looks as if they're just doing different stuff all the time, like changing their minds. It's like, I'm doing group sessions. No, I'm not doing group sessions. No, I'm doing one-on-ones. No, I'm not doing that. I'm actually doing flying. I'm about to go flying. I'm a pilot now. I've got my pilot's license. It's like, okay. I'm doing intuitive sessions as I fly. It's like, right, okay. And it's like, it's just interesting, like when you go through the process of just being creative and creating things for the sake of creating things, like with no outcome or agenda, because that's what flowed through you at the moment to talk about that or put that out to the world sort of thing. And then next week it could change. And not being attached to that.
Yes.
And I guess we were sort of looking at our old projects, because Jody sort of keeps wanting to resurrect our old projects because we've put so much time and effort into it. And I totally get that.
Yeah.
Whereas I've just walked away from it going, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm doing this. And I sort of have the ability to do that. Like, I don't find that difficult at all. But Jody's really struggling with that right now. And so we talked about that. And I said, why is it any different to somebody that does a painting and then that's it, finishes the painting, and then puts it in the gallery, or doesn't even hang it. Just puts it
Yes.
in the back storeroom along with all the other paintings.
Creation. Yeah.
No one ever sees it. Doesn't hang anywhere. No one gets any joy from it. It just sits there. And I said, like, is that a bad thing that somebody's done that? Or a half-finished book? Somebody's gone along, written their memoir or written about a story, and then they half finish it, and then that's it. It never gets finished. It's like, is that a bad thing, or was that just part of the creation process at the time? Like, that's what flowed through. You got half a book written. There was supposed to be no outcome to it. It's just like, for those few weeks that you wrote it, that was it. Then you're on to something else. And it's sort of like the opinions of everybody on the outside is like, oh my God, you're just doing all these things all the time. But when you're in it, it's just like, you're just following the energy. So that's what I said to Jody, is like, okay, yeah, you've got all these things that you could be doing, and they're all great ideas, and they could probably make money, and they could do all these different things. But it's sort of like, is the energy still in there? You have to ask yourself whether you can still keep going with them because of the energy. And if it's not there, let it go.
Yes.
It's done. It's finished, that project.
Yes.
Or it might come back later. But at the moment, there's no energy in it.
Yes.
And so that's where the opinions of outside people can get really tough, because they are seeing all these different things that you're doing, and they're really confused. And we've had that heaps of times, people going, I never can keep up with what you're doing. What are you doing now?
And I think that comes from that, being caught in the ego limited stories that we do get stuck into, and also, it's reflected back to us in society and media and social media and everything else around us too, is that the way to be successful is to do the one thing and stick to it long enough so that it works, so you don't change your ideas midstream. You don't completely change careers, you stick to the career. I mean, that's becoming a little bit more acceptable these days, I suppose, people doing that, but
40 years in one.
Yeah, but definitely the older generation still, like our parents' generation, still don't get how much the younger generations move around, like move careers, move houses, move countries, they don't sort of get how that can work for you, because there is this tried and true process if you just stay at the one job, and but that doesn't exist anymore. Even the world is changing too. Everything is changing around us and speeding up. So we do, we're moving more and more to our, true being, which is creative and changing and always going with the moment and what feels true. So of course that's what we are doing. But the more we step into that, it does look like that to the outside world, that we're changing at the drop of a hat.
Like chaos, doesn't it? We're stepping more into the feminine space now, which looks like just complete chaos. I feel like that.
And something that was just coming up, the idea you're talking about with revisiting old ideas and resurrecting old ideas, and maybe the energy is just not there anymore. I remember reading a really great article by a lady called Jessica Abel, and she's a cartoonist and a lecturer at a university in New York, I think it is. But she helps people with a creative process and having focus on their ideas so that they get stuff done. So these things that really burning inside them, they want to create. And then people kind of fall off the wagon because they've got too many ideas, or they can't focus long enough to get something done, but they really want to do, this thing is really true for them. So she helps people kind of hone all that. But this article was, it just really landed for me, because as I've shared before, I'm someone that has heaps of ideas, and I can get stuck sometimes in that process of either not moving on the idea or hanging on to old ideas, like what you spoke about as well, and then thinking, that idea, I still want to do that idea. And there might be still a little bit of energy in it, but when you do really tap into it, the time has passed for it. It doesn't hold the juice that it used to. And sometimes it's just a story you're telling yourself that it still has that juice, but it doesn't. So this article is around this concept called idea debt, which wasn't her concept. She'd heard it somewhere else, but she kind of really expanded it based on what she'd heard from this particular, I think she heard it in a talk or something. But this idea was around, we have all these ideas and we keep them kind of stored up in our brain, and we're thinking, one day I'm going to do that. Yeah, I really want to do that thing. And it does become like debt. It feels like it's heavy, it has a heavy energy to it. So she, in this article, I think it said about going through this process of just writing out all of your ideas that it's still kind of you've been hanging on to, and then really get honest with yourself about, do they still really hold the juice for me right now, because you can't realistically do them all at the one time. You just can't. So it's kind of as much as we want to live in that infinite space, and I'm definitely guilty of this one, thinking, oh, I can get all these things done. It's just like you can't. Like in this finite world, you are still bound by, you know, time and space and money and all these things. So we are playing with all that. So you do have to kind of pick and choose the things that really excite you. Like you can't do them all. So pick the ones that are still exciting and let go of the ones that are old energy now and move on from them. So but that can be a process too, because the ego wants to keep hold of those things because it thinks it's losing something, or it's
feels safe when there's more ideas than when there's less ideas.
Yeah, as if like we're going to run out of ideas, and if we let that idea go, we'll never get a good idea again, or it's that 1 in a million sort of idea, you know, that it's
I won't make money now if I let go of those ideas.
But it's all limitate. Like when we look into it from a bigger perspective, it's all limitation. Like we're basically saying that we don't, we're not going to have access to creativity anymore or something. So we better make that one idea work. Otherwise we're screwed. Like, and it's just, it's such a story we can get stuck in, but it is again, that whole freedom thing around creating space, which is another topic we're going to dive into another time, is around creating space in your life and all the things that take up space. And so this is one of those things that takes up space, is ideas, and hanging on to ideas. And then the other thing can be opinions, like holding on to the opinions and of others too, that takes up our space. Like it literally why we feel heavy at times, because there's not enough space inside us to feel creative anymore. We lose that connection to our potential, to that infinite space when we hold on to that.
I think it's important too, like, to be really honest with yourself. Like, it's easy to say, oh, that opinion doesn't matter to me anymore. You know, like, I really don't care what my mum says, or, you know, I don't care what my partner says, I'm just going to do this. But be really honest with yourself about whether that is true. Like, because those things cut deep, you know, like opinions, different things, because particularly parents, and particularly people that are really close to, family members and stuff, because that's where traditionally we've got our love from, in this human form. And so when that gets taken away, or threatened to be taken away, you can actually start to really feel like that sense of loss and sadness, and almost a grieving process, like you've lost that person, like it's like they've died almost, because that love has been taken away, because you've moved on from the relationship that you did have, and maybe it'll reform into a different relationship. Or maybe it'll go all together. But it is really honest. It really is important to be honest with yourself and go, you know what, actually their opinion really does cut deep. Like, if my mum doesn't agree with what I'm doing with my project, actually affects me. Like, I actually do feel really out of whack with that. And then allow those feelings to come up and to deal with those feelings, because pushing them back down, going, no, it doesn't affect me anymore, I'm doing what I'm doing and I'm powerful and all this sort of stuff is still a bunch of bullshit. And
it's all ego still.
Ego. So, you're just kidding yourself. So the ego just got really clever again. So that honesty thing is just really important to deal with what's coming up.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
So it is a big topic. It's not an easy
big topic. There's a lot of aspects to it, isn't there, when you dive into it? Like, there's a lot of things, ways to look at it.
And it is, I think it is just that the more you can be present in those situations and know that you're coming from what's feeling true for you, it's somewhat easier, you know, like to have those conversations, or to make those changes, or to
I think that's the final
act on those ideas.
Like, the final point for me is, the more you do step into your true self and your authentic self and your infinite self, and you're living from that space without ego, it's just is what it is, then you'll get less opinions from people. You won't need those reflections anymore to wake you up to different things. Because you're tuned in so much into yourself that people don't need to say to you and question you about different things.
Or they just don't affect you.
They don't affect you anymore.
They just don't trigger you anymore.
Like they're not even there. So it's like, it seems like there's less opinions again. So where we've gone from massive amounts of opinions all of a sudden because we've become aware that, oh, everyone's got an opinion.
Yes.
Down to maybe it just drops away again. You don't really have many opinions. Like, I don't feel like I have that much anymore. Like, you know, mum and dad don't really talk about what we're doing, I think, because they don't really get what we're doing anyway. But to me, that's just reflective of the fact that I don't need to have those conversations with them. They don't get what we're doing. This is not their world. And I'm okay with that. I don't have a buzz point about that. So I don't need them to reflect that by asking me, oh, what are you doing now?
Yes.
So it's sort of like it's lessened again. Like, I don't have those sorts of conversations with people where I feel like I have to explain myself or justify myself about what I'm doing and what's going on for me.
Yes.
And so it does drop away. But then I think that's your certainty as well. When you hold that power of certainty and presence about who you are and what you're doing, you don't get questions about it. It's just people almost like, whoa, you feel that energy. Like, it's like somebody that walks into the room, you're at a conference or a seminar or something, and somebody walks into the room with complete presence and complete certainty. You're not going to be sitting there questioning them about what they're doing. Like, it's just like, whoa, you know exactly what you're doing. Okay, that's cool. I'm willing to listen. It just doesn't hold that same power anymore. So,
yes, definitely. Yeah. Or if you do get the opinions from the outside, like you said, they just don't trigger you anymore. It's almost like you can see it for exactly what it is, and it almost becomes funny.
Laughable.
Like, it almost becomes funny because you can see the ego's attempts, like, and it's just kind of like, oh,
that's
not coming from that space anymore, so it's not grabbing me and it's not sticking anymore. And I was just thinking of something that I heard someone talk about the other day, which I don't even know if it was related to this, but it kind of fits in with like a way of kind of looking at this type of, I guess, where people are coming at you, but you don't have the same triggers anymore, so it doesn't react. So it's almost like it feels, when you're really tied into the story, it feels like a big barking dog, like at you, like sort of, and you're scared of it. Like, so I don't know, maybe like a really big Doberman or something like that, that's kind of aggro, and you're sort of like backing up and you're a bit scared from it. And then once you start to have this more awareness and you move out of that ego space a lot more, and you know what's true for you and you stand in that space, it's almost like it becomes like this little chihuahua, and it's just like this little yip, and you're just like, oh my God, isn't that cute? Look at that little dog over there, like trying to bark at me. Like, and so it is like that.
Really
It's
like that.
it sort of becomes exactly like that. It's just like, it's almost like, oh wow, look at that cute little thing over there trying
come here, I'll play with you.
to be into the story. Whereas before it felt like this massive, scary monster kind of thing on the outside. And that's pretty much how the journey goes a lot of the time in this consciousness, whether it's opinions of others, or it's just you moving on your ideas, or it's leaving a relationship. It always looks like this big scary thing that you can't overcome, and then you sort of move through it. So it is that hero's journey again that we've spoken about. Like, you do go through that cycle of overcoming something,
mini heroes journeys all the time,
and then coming through it more empowered and standing more in your truth and becoming closer and closer to knowing yourself as the the infinite space that's everything. Coming home.
I like that.
That's
fun. So you said, good topic, makes you reassess relationships and opinions. Yeah, it does, definitely.
You have to ask yourself sometimes what you're getting out of. You have to ask yourself why you do keep certain relationships going, because sometimes it is purely because you get something out of it that you feel like you need, sort of thing. And sometimes you're kind of like, well, I don't actually need that anymore. It's kind of interesting.
But then you get to do it because it's fun. It's like, do you have fun with that?
Yeah, you do get to. That's true. You get to choose then what.
Then suddenly, that becomes more of interest. It's like you only do stuff because it's fun.
Yeah, and some people have friends like. Some people have friends like that. I can't say I necessarily have this distinction, but I have heard of people saying that they've only got friends that they just go out with because they know it's just going to be purely fun. Like, they don't have, high level conversations about stuff, but it's just fun. Like, they go out knowing they're going to have a great time together, and that's it. And then you have the other friends that you have the deeper, meaningful kind of conversations with, but maybe they're not as much, into going out and just having fun, doing silly things or something. So we do kind of tend to have different friends that we kind of, maybe you just differentiate them for that, and exactly what that relationship is about, and that's all good. Everyone knows what everyone's there for, and you do just show up and be yourself in that moment, knowing exactly what you're there for, sort of thing. You don't have agendas behind them too. So yep.
It's quite interesting. It does make you think about it. It's good. Cool. And I guess, yeah, like as you go along, you become more discerning about the
Yeah.
relationships you have and how people are supporting you and showing up. So
Yes.
you become less, I feel, I have become less tolerant of different relationships and ways of being. And not that I feel like I'm judgmental, I just don't have the energy for it anymore.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
just
it just feels like you're rewriting your script, isn't it? Like you realize that character is just not fitting anymore. It used to fit, but now it doesn't, and it's like changing it up or rewriting that person. That person goes out of the script; they're no longer in your story anymore, or you change how they show up. Like, I mean, I said again, this is not coming usually from your conscious mind. It is like, you know, we're sort of usually just playing out the story and not kind of sitting here going, "Well, I'm going to make that person do that over there, and I'm going to do this." But it's kind of, you know, we can
have a divorce. I'm going to make that get a broken leg.
But the more we do sit in that space of knowing that we are everything, then we do show up differently, and we get to then be more conscious with those relationships and who we do choose to interact with. Yeah. So we can choose to not engage with certain people anymore, or because it's just not, we've shifted and they haven't, or it's nothing right or wrong with either of those things. It's just people outgrow. Your story changes and you outgrow people, and it's time to move on. And sometimes that looks a bit painful to the ego to do that, but it's just growth. It's creativity. At the end of the day, it's going to keep. There's nothing we can't stop things from changing. Like it's a natural part of life.
Always
So
new people
constant we have. So.
New friendships and new relationships coming into our space that serve us better than the old ones.
Yes.
It's just being open to those and not hanging on to the old ones.
Yeah. Or even changing form. You know, people talk about when people pass away, how there is a grieving process, obviously, when somebody's not there in your physical space anymore. But you can still have a relationship with that person, like it's just shifted form. So it's just they've gone back into the infinite space now, and you could still definitely have a relationship with that. It's just completely different, but so you have to rethink how you interact with that that energy that was that person before in this lifetime. But you can absolutely still carry that on, but it's just how much we stay tied into the story of the physical that will determine how you know how much we stay in that story of grief. And it's just grief over the physical normally that we're we miss having the person in that space, and that showing up as that. And that can happen even in when you're still alive, like somebody leaves your life, just as in, like, say, a divorce or a friend you have a falling out with, and you do go through that grieving process a little bit because you do miss how that used to happen in your life and that story, that and how it used to play out and the role they used to play and how you used to get to show up. And that's okay too. It is part of the journey of that grieving of what was and what you're moving into.
But it's also interesting to say nothing's ever lost nor destroyed. It just changes form. We get very attached to particular forms. You know, my mum shows up this way, sort of thing. So I'm very attached to that because that's our relationship is so rich and involved. And when your mum passes away, then what was it about her? What traits did she have that you really admired in that? And this is some of John Demartini's work that we've done with, you know, facilitated hundreds of people going through this process. You know, and it particularly becomes prevalent in death, where you were really attached to that form, that physical form of that person, and suddenly they're gone. And it's like, but what was it about that person that really, really excited you, that you loved, you know, more than anything? And it's like, oh, I really loved how they gave me hugs, and I really loved how we could sit and chat for hours type thing and stuff. And it's like, okay, where is that showing up now? If nothing is ever lost or destroyed, where is those traits showing up in your life now? I was like, oh, yeah, it's funny actually, you know, John at work now starts giving me hugs now I think about it. Like, he never used to do that, but now actually we've become a lot closer, and actually he does hug me a bit more than he used, that we never did before. I was like, oh, that's really weird. I was like, oh, and then, you know, Maxine, like, actually I'm spending more time with her now, and we do go out and we have coffees and we have long chats and stuff. It's like, oh, actually I never really saw that before. And I was like, yeah, it's all still there. It just showed up in a different form. So if they're the things you really gel with and you really love about people or somebody, then where is it showing up now? That's a really important question to ask, because it hasn't gone away. It's just showing up differently now.
Form.
Yeah, change form.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Mhm.
We're totally off topic, off opinions of people, but there you go. Okay, so.
Yeah, that's my fault.
Cool. All right, let's wrap it up.
Wrap it up. Yep.
And we'll be back tomorrow.
Yes.
Let us know in the comments if what sparked for you today and what you got out of it. I don't know. Tomorrow we might talk about space. Maybe we'll tackle that topic. This is a
Yep.
good one. It's a cool topic too.
Yes, all the things that take up space in our minds and
How to have
and
more space and what
how to
that
have
can
more
do.
space, definitely. Yep.
What
Yeah,
does
the
that
more
mean?
the more we
What
move into the infinites, to move into the infinite, you have to create more space. So that is, you do have to get rid of all the other stuff that's taking up your energy. Yep.
Yep.
So that's big.
So as we talk about grief today, we'll probably talk about grief tomorrow because that's what's going to feel like, letting go of stuff.
True. Declutter.
And nothing's ever lost or destroyed. It just changes form.
Very true.
So we'll talk about that again tomorrow, no doubt.
Yep.
Cool.
Thanks for joining us today, and let us know in the comments of anything that's landing for you, or how if that's creating more freedom for you, how you think you might be able to show up a bit differently and not be as affected from the outside by other people. Yes, we would love to hear.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. All right.
Bye.
See you all tomorrow.
Bye.
Play infinitely.